Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to Uncommon Sense. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Junia, and today my guest is Dr. Julie Tkach. Dr. Tkach is chair of the Hospitality Management Department at Northwood University. Before coming to Northwood, Dr. Tkach taught at Grand Valley State University and Michigan State University Hospitality Departments. Dr. Tkach earned her Bachelor of Arts, Master of Science, and PhD degrees in the hospitality business from Michigan State University. She is a certified dietary manager and a certified food protection professional. Welcome, Dr. Tkach.
Thank
Well, this
you.
is a field I need to learn about because I have only ideas but no real exposure. So what exactly does hospitality encompass as a field today?
Well, hospitality has a lot of definitions. And my personal definition is that it's the care and concern of others, building relationships with others. And it's really this field that every company, every industry needs hospitality in it, whether it's what you've studied or it's just the way that you are. We call that the hospitality spirit.
That's beautiful.
And it's the idea of how do you care about others and take care of them in whatever you're doing. In our field, it's through food. It's through dining and hotels and catered events. The hospitality field has grown by definition in recent years to include, from an educational standpoint, things like real estate and investment, how we're teaching students about building hotels and financing them, more than what we used to be when I was an undergrad, where we simply were learning about the food side of it or the hotel side of it.
Is it promotions such as tourism?
Tourism is a tightly woven piece to hospitality. A lot of educational entities will actually separate the two and put tourism in with the more community development side of it, but not all. Grand Valley merges the two and has it a hospitality and management department, hospitality and tourism department. And they're very, very, very closely related because you need the hospitality businesses when you're having a tourism development, tourism experience, that kind of thing.
I could imagine that if I were working or one was working in the hospitality business, one would also have as a side responsibility participating in local events and developing the area you're in one way or another. Is that considered part of the field or not?
Well, it depends on what the focus really is. When we're talking about hospitality business, as again, educational, we're looking at the management of it, the running the food service code, the things that you're doing to protect the food and be safe in a hotel. When we're looking at community development and thinking about how do we take care of the earth and being good stewards, then that does include it. We want our hotels and our restaurants to be good stewards of the earth, and how do we take care of our communities. And there are a lot of community involvement opportunities that many restaurants and hotels and other hospitality entities will take part in because that's just good community service.
So is hospitality of a part? I've heard of hotel management schools, and that is not considered hospitality? It is. It's just different branches of the overall.
Yes.
So there's hotel, there's food, there's real estate and development.
There's many others too. There's club management, so private clubs, public clubs, city clubs. There's contract management. I spent the majority of my corporate career in contract management, running food services in hospitals and long-term care facilities, places where people weren't there for the first reason of eating, but they needed to have food, and that includes ballparks, That includes golf courses and places like that where there might be food there. And so the field is wide open in terms of the types of hospitality businesses where graduates of a program can start seeking jobs.
Now you mentioned corporate, you were doing that. What was that experience like?
Well, I started out in restaurants and I'd had some hotel experience, and after less than favorable kind of home life balance, I was really working a lot. A friend of mine actually got me inspired and involved with a contract food service company that was a small one, and I spent almost 8 years with them and really enjoyed the types of things that I was doing. It was not only running the cafeterias or the dining rooms for long-term care residents or patients at hospitals, I'm sorry. I was also doing food service up at Interlochen Center for the Arts, and so there was the catering that went with that. I really was enjoying that, and also serving the students that were there for the camps. And then I was really enjoying the business side of it, where it was like having your own business.
Yes.
We had to find out ways to make more money, like selling pies or breads to the residents' families, or to have meals that also interested the staff that worked there. How do we feed all of these different types of people who were there? I was there for about 8 years and out in the corporate world about 10, when I decided that it was time to actually go back to school. I had always wanted to teach, and I also enjoyed that piece of my job, which was the education and doing the in-services and things that you have to do for the requirements of the state. And I decided to go back and work on my master's. That's when I was able to teach at Grand Valley, and I knew that the education piece of it was really the next step in my career. I was very happy to come back
What excited
there.
you about teaching that you did not have in the corporate job you had?
Well, my mom was a teacher her whole life, and education went back on both sides of my family. So for a very long time, that's what I had wanted to do.
Oh, yes.
When I got to the university, my mom was adamant that I find my own path. Don't just go into education because she was a teacher. And so I tried several different fields, and I found hospitality, and it was the right fit for me. It was one of those things where I had no second guessing at all, that I was ready to change my major and become a part of the hospitality business department. When I got the education out in the field, when I got that real world education, and I had again been doing that for about 10 years, I just knew again that it was time to take that and do something different. I was getting kind of burnt out. Again, the hours weren't as great as I would have liked them to be, and I had the opportunity to go back to school, and I took that leap of faith. I had an elderly resident who was actually had his PhD from U of M, and he took me under his wing in a lot of ways. I'd lost both of my grandfathers, and he gave me this phrase. He said, "Whose bank are you paying into? Are you working day in and day out because it's filling your bank, or are you working day in and day out to fill someone else's bank?" And I know he didn't necessarily mean that monetarily. It was really emotional as well, because anyone with a career knows that you do spend a lot of time emotionally invested in that, and it's hard to separate that out, no matter how good the money may be, if it's not really your passion. Now, I still loved it, but I took that leap of faith that it was time to go back to school, and I knew I wanted to teach. So again, I was able to adjunct at Grand Valley for a little bit while I worked on my master's, and found out that a lot of universities and even community colleges were going only with doctorate students, doctoral graduates.
Yes.
And so I had the opportunity to stay on. I was funded with a graduate assistantship, and so I spent the next 8 years or so at MSU with a wonderful department behind me, the hospitality management department, or hospitality business, and then also with the tourism. I had a dual kind of assignment and degree. So I learned the tourism side of it, got the hospitality business side of it, and then was teaching as well in that school, and I just loved it. So.
And the food safety, those other certifications, what do you need those for?
Well, I had those as a corporate worker.
Oh.
But they're extremely valuable in my field as an educator, because that allows me to really show that I understand what I'm talking about. I have these certifications, and then be able to teach those classes as well for food safety and food science. So, not food science, food
What
safety.
would you like your students to learn?
Well, there's the saying that goes, you can teach people skills, but you really can't teach them to be hospitable. You can't teach them to be nice. In the heat of the moment, when things are all against you, you go with your normal instincts.
Yes.
And so I really enjoy seeing students who use that passion for taking care of others.
Yes.
And have that deep desire to make hospitality a common phrase, a common entity out there that people really can feel good about, and then they're learning the skills that take them far in their career.
So if you had some students who maybe didn't have that gift, can it be learned, or
There are
would
still
you
jobs for them.
suggest they go in a different direction?
There are still jobs for them in the hospitality field. There's hospitality accounting, there's hospitality finance, there's hospitality computer science that people need to know, there's vending, there's all of these other niches
Yeah.
that are all related to hospitality. Basically, if it's happening in any other industry, we have that in the hospitality industry, but we tend to have a little more fun with it. We have a little more of a people contact with it. And so if this is their passion, they don't have to go elsewhere. They just might want to really be honest with themselves and say, do I want to have that customer contact day in and day out? Do I
Right.
want to be in those stressful situations where am I going to grow the business, or am I going to turn people away because I'm not a people person? And there are all kinds in the hospitality
Do
industry.
you give tests? How do people find out, or is it just sort of they discover it?
Well, I think if you're honest with yourself, you can figure
can
that
know.
out through, we require job internships and job practicums at Northwood. And so those are real world experiences that they must have to graduate. Those are perfect times for people to find out, especially not only as an industry as a whole, but niches. Do I like the club industry? Do I like the hotel side of it? Do I like catering? Do I like restaurants? What is it that gets them interested in it? But also to have the opportunity to just fuel that desire to find their own niche.
Right, to discover. You mentioned your mother before. What other little things or big things did she encourage you to do or be?
Well, she really said, again, like a lot of parents do, you need to find what makes you happy, and you need to just stick with it. And she was a lifelong educator, and as people nowadays, it really seems that they kind of job hop very quickly, or there's a lot of opportunity. We find out about jobs very quickly. We know that young people are going to have like 7 different careers in their lifetime, not just different jobs, but careers. And so for me to stick with it and have the ability to talk with students about, maybe navigating the path in and out as you have those opportunities, but I'll always have the goal in mind. My mom had a phrase that was, just keep marching along. Just always, just keep going. Don't give up, and always just stick with it.
And your dad, what was his philosophy of life?
Oh, my dad was just the big supporter all the way around. He was always there. He still is, and it's always nice to get to spend time with him. One story that about hospitality: my grandfather, though my mom's dad, was a cook in the Army. And he and his love of cooking was another thing, just thinking back to one of your earlier questions, that really got me interested and kind of solidified that I knew I was home. I had both grandfathers actually in food. And so when I was interested in hospitality business, both my mom and dad were right there saying, oh, this reminds us of this grandfather. Oh, this is great because, and never a question of money, never a question of, well, what will your career be like? Oh, you'll have to work more than if you did an office job. So it was wonderful to have that kind of support.
Yes,
when you're
Olivia.
trying to choose a major, it's hard enough for our
I think
students.
unless you're born knowing or discovered early on, there's a lot of experimentation, which is good too.
Absolutely.
If you're lucky enough to connect in a way that is productive and satisfying. Yes. Oh, very interesting. And what kind of students are drawn to hospitality?
There are actually all kinds of students. We have a number of students who start out in other fields.
Yes.
I'm thinking of one student right now who's co-chair of our Stafford Dinner. It's a student-run fine dining event coming up. And we have this student who used to be, I think, in finance or accounting, and he became involved with some of the fun activities that our hospitality club was doing and switched majors, and now he's a co-chair of the event. So it's a really fun department, a really fun group of students. They really have this passion.
And there's change in the course of a day.
Absolutely.
Unless you have a desk job.
Absolutely.
So much has been written and talked about food safety. It has to be tested and refrigerated and frozen. and what, as a consumer, do you think we ought to focus on? I mean, they seem to have outbreaks of this and that, and maybe it's just because they can measure them better.
Well, there's two really important things. Of course, everything is important in the whole food process of getting it from farm to table. But hand washing is actually one of the amazing things that I think a lot of people don't really understand what they touch and everything that they touch, and then they touch their food or they're touching their faces and they're eating at their desks, and all of these things that we touch can really influence how we feel when we're eating or afterward. The other thing too is food temperatures. I know people, and my grandparents did this, my mom did this, that aren't just thawing foods correctly. They're maybe buying them and they're staying out too long when they get home. And so we aren't the culprits who are maybe causing something at the beginning, at the front end, but there are ways that we as consumers can influence how safe food is once it's in our hands.
Now, I had heard about washing your hands. You're supposed to wash them with soap for a certain number of seconds.
Yes.
And the signs I have always seen in washrooms, employees must wash hands. And I'm saying it is missing the instructions with soap and whatever you want to say about that. And I thought someone let this get by and needs to be changed. The other thing I want to ask you has to do with leaving food too much out. I've been becoming more conscious, talking to different people, that histamines grow in food if normally occurring, and then they then they grow for whatever reason. But as a result of that, if you're histamine sensitive, and some are and most aren't, that it isn't good to put them in the refrigerator. You cook it and then into the freezer and then out if you're going to use it, because even though it chills it and takes it down, call it the decay process, whatever the process that is still continuing. And so that brought me in my thinking around to people's sensitivities, red dye, gluten, dairy, nuts. And I think this is a big field. Is that something the hospitality food section is focusing on in a certain way?
If you, in our department, we do have a sanitation course.
Yes.
And that is part of what is talked about, not only the handling of it, but how do you chill foods and what should be the proper way. The bulk of that would be more in a food science course.
I see.
But that's not to say that, again, those same things aren't taught in our courses, but it is very important from a management standpoint that our future managers and employees understand about allergies and what's the difference between a sensitivity and an allergy.
Yes.
And a lot of things that people are self-diagnosing.
Yes.
And when you're running an event, how can you minimize the number of unhappy customers because they were expecting something that might be gluten-free? And if you're planning this wedding or if you're putting on this dinner, do you have those kinds of options? Because it is well beyond vegetarian meals, vegan meals, or dairy-free. Some of those common ones are no longer what the
only
the
ones.
citizens expect. They expect to have gluten-free, and they expect to have paleo diet foods, and some of these newer interests for healthful eating.
There's a company, a Michigan company, I think called Neogen, that's into food safety, but I imagine there are several of them. And so the food science course would teach which companies do what, or is that hospitality management because it has to do with cleanliness, or what?
Well, I'm not as familiar with like teaching what the companies would be doing.
Okay.
In a food science course, as a student, when I took a food science course, it was really understanding that science behind what's happening to the person's body. Why do these things react in your system the way they do, or how does hand washing really scientifically affect you and all of the bacteria and things. As from a management standpoint, though, understanding what your resources are, what kind of companies need to be involved when you're planning a restaurant and keeping yourself safe, and what chemical companies or food protection companies in terms of supplies. And so there are two sides of it, and I hope I answered your question.
Well, yes, but I was told, so many years ago now, that that often lettuce for salads or greens for salad raw are washed with a sulfite rinse.
Okay.
And that some people are sulfite sensitive, but they wouldn't necessarily think that they had the rinse in order to preserve the greens longer.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, I wonder what else is going on that people, the few percent that are allergic or reactive, can find out or ask about. And certainly the raw greens I know, but I wouldn't know what else to ask.
That's true, that there's a lot of, I'd say, resources online to start with, especially if you know that you're sensitive, finding out what foods does that entail. And unfortunately, it really becomes the person who is sensitive or has that kind of distress to be very vigilant. About what
Vigilant and diligent.
Vigilant, thank you. I combined two
That's
words.
all right.
I'm
We got
sorry.
it.
That you are taking the time to ask the questions, and unfortunately, as a consumer, sometimes servers or establishments may not be as receptive to really finding out. And that's from where I come in with educating our future managers and making sure that people who are running those establishments understand the need. And again, going back to being hospitable, when somebody's asking that kind of a question, not to take it lightly, but to really be concerned about that as if that were your own concern.
I just love it. I feel, generally speaking, our hospitality is getting better in America as our food is getting I hope better. I don't really I was thinking restaurants and, availability of various kinds of things. On the food, what do they call it, farm to table? It sounded very expensive to me. I don't.
Well, I think that we're having consumers who are through social media, not only reporting how quickly they can report on places that they enjoyed or didn't enjoy, what they found. There are forums for people with the sensitivities and for interest in farm to table and that kind of thing. So consumers are much more able to be a resource, some information out there for others, and as a business kind of feedback source that these are places that are helping or not helping. So we do have a better system, I think, largely due to the way that our
social media supports
technology is playing a part.
I was looking up a new app the other day, and I was just reading about it, and a couple of people said really specifically why they didn't like it. Within hours, the company had replied, thank you, we're aware of this, we're not aware, but we're handling it, try it again. And I loved it, because so often you can have a bad experience and you just cancel your whole experience, future experience with the entity, whatever it is. And this gives a way to, clean up the restaurant, clean up the hotel. Now, for example, the other day, someone said to me, you travel a lot, Junia, you're in a lot of hotels. Do you have a carbon monoxide gadget? Because, very often that can be an issue. And I said, yes, the hotel windows don't open these days. And I never knew, and maybe I shouldn't carry it, but but that kind of awareness of what you can do yourself to, what do I say? I don't want to be too Boy Scout, but I'm really Boy Scout, Girl Scout oriented. Be prepared, so much easier. So I don't know if they teach air handling and that kind of thing in hospitality, but I will say it's a good thing because you're looking over the overall experience. Thank you. So, didn't we have a good time here learning all about things I really didn't know about in great detail? So, this is a wide open business, and it's a lot of places you can go, front with people or behind. If you're going to be front, you have to have a nurturing, supportive personality that really empathizes with the people coming to you so that you can take care of them, make them feel relaxed, solve their problems, and add to their life so they feel comfortable and even enhanced in your presence and with this institution you're in. If you're more of an introvert or more peevish, back office things are more appropriate for you. Find yourself a mentor like she had, or take his phrase, whose bank is it feeding? Is it your employer? Is it you? In other words, if I understood her correctly, it was about satisfaction. So I want to wish you goodness and be kind to yourself and love yourself, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
To contact Junia, send her an email at info@juniadome.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadome.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.